Hadrian's Wall. We are in ancient Rome and we are trying to build the wall, and as you do that, a lot of stuff happens in the community around you. This is a Euro game in which you are trying to hire a lot of people, to use a lot of different workers, to create different effects, to create different synergies, but ultimately all that it comes down to is scoring points. If you play the game multiplayer, then you're trying to have the highest score. The game can also be played solitaire, in which case you're trying to beat your previous score. So it's a multiplayer game with a solitaire option, right? Or what if it's really a solitaire game with a multiplayer option? Ooh, intrigued? Well, keep watching and you'll see what I mean. By the way, full disclaimer, I did play the game only in solitaire. I will resume game night with adult friends at some point later in 2021. For now, I still play either with my kids or solitaire. This game, as you can see, can be pretty involved. Just the visual density here, the granularity, maybe a little overwhelming. And if you feel that way, it's okay, it's accurate, it's correct. The game does have a considerable learning curve, I believe. So I play the game solitaire. And again, it plays pretty much the same as multiplayer from what I see in the rulebook, to the point that when you play solitaire, you do not even have to worry about an AI. There is no AI. You do exactly the same as you would in a multiplayer solo. Multiplayer game, interesting slip of tongue there. In a multiplayer game, pretty much everybody would be working on their own display, and at the end you score points. There are some minor, not even interactions, like you can use some resources that come from cards of the people next to you, and to simulate that you will simply draw some cards here when you play solitaire, but again, as you can see, that's really minimal. That is not even a AI. So to play the game, each player will have a tile like this, as a double tile. As you can see, you put the two together to make this super ginormous mega tile. That's not so big, but still. And then these two sheets, each time you play, you will need two of these for each player. They are different from one another. We'll talk about them more in detail. Each player also has a deck of cards that look like this. At the beginning of the game, you shuffle them. The game lasts 6 turns. At the beginning of each turn, each player draws 2 cards, and you look at them. One of them you place here, and it will give you some extra resources for that turn. And one you tuck under a slot, the slot of your personal board there that corresponds to the current turn. So for the first turn, that would be that one, and then later in turn 2, I look at these 2 cards, I place this one next to the tile where you saw earlier, and that becomes the prospect card, which again gives me several advantages, and this one I tuck there with only the top part visible. And that is a bonus that I will collect at the end of the game. So as the game progresses, you're basically selecting different things that you will score, basically you can see on if you have completed wall sections, or scout columns, or gladiator strength, large buildings, cohorts, and so on and so forth. A lot of variety there. Then we have the Fate deck, which represents the picks, which are the invaders that will attack our wall at the end of every turn. At the beginning of the turn, however, we flip a card face up, and for now, we simply look at the bottom part of the card, and every player collects those resources. So we look at these meeples here, very cute meeples, plus some bricks. And so I will collect here 2 black meeples, 2 light blue, 2 purple, a yellow, and a brick. And everybody would collect those resources, take them from the supply, place them in your personal supply, and then it's time to go. This is a game which is we used to call them roll and write, then it became roll and draw, draw and draw a card from a deck, flip and draw. It's those games where basically the game state changes based on what you write or draw, and in this case what you cross up. The main mechanic is that you will spend resources, so you will return bricks or meeples to the supply to be allowed to cross off, to fill in boxes from all of these tracks. And they work in different ways, and this is where the learning curve becomes steep from the very beginning. Here you have, again, the general idea is that we're building defenses against the pits, and in the meanwhile, a lot of stuff is happening in the community around us. To build the fort, which is a track, and tracks need to be built from left to right, filling in all of the boxes in that order. For each box in the fort that I'm gonna fill in, I need to return to the supply a light blue meeple representing a builder or a black meeple representing a soldier. Suppose that I return two, any combination of those two to the supply, then I can do this. I fill in these two areas. As you can see, by filling in things from time to time, you will fill in an area over one of these flags. These are basically, they represent requirements. There are certain things that you can do if you reach that flag. For example, if I want to build a medium granary, I need to spend a purple meeple, a light blue meeple, a rock or a brick, and have that one right there. And later maybe I do this, and maybe I do that. If I cross out an area that has a meeple in it, like that one for the tan meeple, the tan meeple on the sheet, yellow meeple in real life, then I collect the corresponding meeple. Pretty cool. And so you spend these resources, but also depending on what you mark, you get some. And so you get some and you spend more, and so on and so forth. Wall and chippy, those are parts of the fortification. In order for you to fill in these areas, you need to have filled in the corresponding fort. You cannot have wall or chippy that are longer than the fort. And so, for example, I fill in some wall by spending bricks, and by doing that I collect some yellow meeples. Oh, I filled in that area, which gives me some renown. So basically what you find inside a box that you cross out is the reward. And as we said, sometimes that is a meeple, sometimes it's a box that you fill in on one of these tracks that will score you points at the end. Sometimes the reward is this red symbol here, which means I can mark a box in one of my three cohorts. There is one on the left, one on the center, and one on the right. At the end of the turn, the pits will attack. There will be a card draw. We'll draw several cards, and they may attack right, left, or in or center. And so it's a little bit random here. I just gained a court advantage. My advantage is I'm putting people in my court, and suppose I got the feeling that I'll be attacked from the left. So for now I do that. There's no way I'm gonna go into every section of the sheet here. I want to give you the sense of the general idea, but also want to give you a sense that there is a lot to crunch before you really get to grok the system. Spending purple meeples in mining and foresting will increase my production, so I get a break. But you see that hammer? That means that I increase the production, which means I get more resources at the beginning of each year. Again, each turn is a year, 6 years, 6 turns each game. If I have reached that flag, so I have infrastructure 2, then I can spend a purple, a light blue meeple, and a brick to build a small hotel, which will give me a yellow meeple. As you can see, will also give me an extra meeple per year. This small workshop will give me builders, so again the light blue meeples. The small road will give me other advantages, and so on and so forth. This other side, the other sheet, represents pretty much what the yellow meeples, which are the citizens, can give you. And again, each track needs to be filled in from left to right. You collect the corresponding rewards, so spend a yellow to get a purple, and so on and so forth. Again, when you reach a flag, Similar to what you saw on the other sheet, when you reach a flag, that means that you met the precondition, the requisite to start something else. For example, by getting traders, not only am I collecting the stuff that I see here, but I will be then allowed to build other things, such as the small precincts or the market when I can trade goods. Performers, by collecting performers and meeting those requirements, then I can spend further resources to do other stuff, such as putting on a performance. You can only put on a performance per year. There's several boxes in the game that have that symbol there, that hashtag, is that how you call it? That means that you can use those boxes only once per year as a way of recording that. Suppose it's the second year, second turn. Instead of just marking it, you write down the number of the current turn / year. So you know you haven't used it too much, and you will spend those resources, collect those rewards. Thanks to the performers, you can also collect, build the Lusus Gladiatorius, where you then train your gladiators and then you send them to fight. It's a little bit of a complicated procedure. I'm not gonna give it to you in detail. Priests will allow you to collect a lot of purple meeples and also build small gardens and temples, which in turn will give you other advantages. The apparitores, you build the baths or you build the courthouse. The bath will allow you to, create political connections, will allow you to remove disdain. Disdain is a negative thing that you collect when you're unable to fend off invasions from the pits. The patricians will create diplomats that will give you protections against enemy attacks. Also, you can send them out as scouts, and basically you will use this Tetris kind of pattern here on the prospect cards, and you're playing Tetris, almost like its own mini game, which again allows you to collect resources as you cover them, but also then to score points. As you can see, there's a lot going on. After players have completed their turn, which pretty much will be when they spent all of their resources, and you should try to do that because you can't save them from one year to the next. Once players have used all of their resources or there's nothing they can do anymore, then it's time to resolve an enemy attack. You will draw, too much glare there. You will draw a number of cards from that deck depending on the year that you're playing. Say, suppose we're in year 3, the year that you're playing, and level of difficulty. So if you want easy, medium, or hard, you will draw 3, 4, or 5 cards correspondingly, accordingly. In year 3, suppose we're playing easy, then we draw 3 cards from the same deck where we got our resources, but this time we don't look at the resources, we only look at the top. It was 3 cards, right? That means that this year we receive 2 attacks on the right cohort and 1 attack in the center. And then we simply look at the boxes that we crossed off in our cohort section. For example, that would be a big problem for me because I took 3 attacks. I wasn't able. I let through 3 attacks that will generate 3 disdain. I record them here, and they will give me negative points at the end of the game. But if I was able to repel the attacks because the number of boxes in a certain section is equal to or higher than the number of attacks in that section, then I gain valor instead. All right. And it can be that some attacks you defend against, some attacks go through, in which case you gain a mix of valor and disdain. So you continue like this for 6 turns. At that point, you score each of these tracks here. You score each track individually. Then you add those cards that you had tucked in during the game. So you score whatever points come from the conditions that you met. You score points, you lose points based on the disdain that you have. You collect disdain here, but you may be able to remove it using the bath effect. And then you simply total all of your points and you see your total score. Highest score wins the game. If playing solo, if you beat your previous score, you also win the game, or in any case, you did a little bit better than before. So I played the game only solitaire, and there's a lot going on. The game is not easy to learn, at least in my experience. I wasn't too happy with the rule book. I think that there are things that could have been done better to facilitate learning the game. There's no index, for example. If I want to quickly check a certain rule about the courthouse or the diplomats, I don't have a page that tells me courthouse, diplomats, cohorts, etc., etc., etc. There's no such a thing. Anatomy of the cards. You expect that in a game that has cards, especially when there's a lot going on the cards. No such thing. What the Tetris thing is only explained in a certain section and not in an area that tells you what everything is on the cards. But I was playing solitaire, so I was okay going back to the rulebook constantly the first time that I played. And then, well, things started making a little more sense. One mistake that I made, no one warned me though, but you're watching this video, so you're gonna have an advantage there, is that I tried to learn everything before I started the first game, and you don't have to. One of the strengths of the game, which gives replay value to the game, is that you won't be able to do everything every turn, every game. You won't be able to build everything, exploit all of the different specialists that are available in the game. You won't be able to have really gardens, courthouses, temples, ludus gladiatorius, and a strong wall, and build landmarks, and hotels, and workshops, blah, 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 blah. So especially when it comes to those specialized buildings and activities that come from the citizens, my recommendation is to breeze through, well, the entire rule book, but don't worry about about learning it all. And then the first game, simply go and look at specific areas, and maybe you build one or two specific kind of buildings. You'll learn about those, because it may be that after you learn everything, you'll still be building only those 2-3 things and really exploiting those. So you're still playing in a legitimate way, even if you don't use everything, because again, you won't be able to. The good thing is, once you learn how to play the game, then you really have a lot of fun opportunities, a lot of different branching trees of actions, interactions, and synergies. Ultimately, you know that the invaders are coming, and so there is fun there, because it's not just about, well, I'm building my civilization, I'm building my things, etc., 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 and just scoring points and making resources out of other resources. The fact that there is a threat, the fact that you may lose points, I don't know, that loss aversion that we all have in life and when we play games, I think it works well here, because it's not just about magnifying your income and your point engine, but it's also about reducing the chances of loss. So, okay, I'm gonna spread my cohorts around, but then really a ton of cards for the right cohort already came out, so there may be fewer. That way, I'm gonna try to get some favors from the temples, some help from the diplomats to kind of like pay for things that I cannot defend against. Oh, this turn I defended, that's great. Oh, last turn I didn't defend very well, so let me see if I can use the diplomacy in the bathhouse to make up for some of those things. So I like the fact that there's a positive aspect. I'm building all of my buildings, but there's also the threat of a negative aspect that you still have to take care of. And definitely it is fun to see how your mini civilization really goes from game to game, because of the different ways that you will be invaded, because of the different ways in which the resources will come out on the fate on the fate card at the beginning of the turn, and then certain things will be more natural than others, and also because of the different order in which the cards come out from your personal deck. The one from which every turn you choose something to score and something to use right away. Because simply you may not be able. Oh, I really like these two objectives. Well, you cannot become a part of a script that you use every turn, every game, that you will always score those two, because now those two cards came out at the same time. You will only be able to place one in the score area. So again, the different priorities that you select for scoring, they will change the game. every time that you play. I like that because really you have a medium heavy-ish. It's not a heavy like hardcore game, but because of the steep learning curve, I'm not just gonna call it a medium game. Maybe it's a medium game that feels like hardcore game when you get started, but it's a medium weight, medium complexity game with a lot going on. At the core, it's pretty simple, really. Spend bricks or meeples to cross off areas, but to do it well, with all of the synergies in place, with all of the different buildings working together, that is hard to master, and that is what is fun. What is fun to me in a game design is to have interesting decisions, and this game provides you plenty. Again, I played it only solitaire, and this is the only mode in which I believe I will ever play it. First, I don't want to even begin teaching this game to anybody. Man, no, somebody shows up when I have game night again at the end of the pandemic, and they already know the game. Possibly. And sure, I like the fact that everybody plays at the same time, so there shouldn't be downtime due to analysis paralysis. And yet, part of the fun to me was really, as I was playing solitaire, taking my own darn sweet time, really figuring out how to maximize things, because there may be a case where I only have one meeple left, but by spending a certain way, then it gives me another resource that I didn't realize, and then I can trade that and do something else, etc., etc., etc. Part of the fun is really maximizing and making sure that you create the right synergies, you don't waste anything. And I don't know that I would be able to enjoy it so much when playing with other people, where I may start feeling guilty. If everybody's done, then I'm not playing optimally because I go in a rush and I'm missing some of those fun opportunities. Or I am sitting there because I did satisfactorily complete my turn, and I should give somebody else the chance of doing their turn, and they're taking too long. So despite the fact that the game plays simultaneously, again, this is just my guess, so take it for what it is, a simple guess. Despite that, in my experience with games of this kind, you still have the risk of different players taking very different amounts of time to be done, and so I'm just afraid of the risk of downtime, but that's just my guess. So, as a solitaire, I have no hesitation recommending it to any committed gamer out there. There is an interesting theme, but most important that this really is a game with nice interlocking mechanics to give you so many different options, so many different paths. Takes some commitment to get started, but once you get started, everything makes sense. And again, start by just using some of the functions on the board, add the other ones as you play your second, your third, or fourth game, and you will have a really fun mini civilization solo game that is rewarding and fun to play. Also, it sets up easily because you just need to use those sheets of paper and place your tokens around. You put it back in the box easily. Again, you clean up the table easily. It travels well if you just bring a couple of sheets with you and the tiles and the tokens. And also, it does come with nice thick stacks of those sheets, and because those, of course, you need one every time that you play. So I don't think you're gonna need reloads anytime soon. The design looks busy, and it's busy because there's a lot of information, but in retrospect, I think they still designed those sheets very well, precisely because they were able to put so much information in what still remains a physically manageable play area. So Hadrian's Wall is a game that I enjoy very much as a solitaire. To me, it is a solitaire. If you're experienced enjoying it, multiplayer, let me know. I'd be curious to know. But to me, it's a very solid, very fun solitaire game.